Jeff Bezos revealed something that I think should terrify anyone who owns a gaming PC, workstation, or even a basic laptop. But the worst part, the tech industry is already making it happen, whether you like it or not. I'm talking about the beginning of the end of PC ownership as we know it, ultimately being replaced by a subscription model where you literally rent your computer power from Amazon, Microsoft, or Google. And before you click away thinking this is some conspiracy theory, this is actually coming from Bezos himself in a recent interview that is going viral. So let's start with what actually triggered this. At the 2024 New York Times DealBook Summit, Jeff Bezos sat down for an interview and dropped this lovely analogy that's been making waves across tech media recently. He told a story about visiting a 300-year-old brewery in Luxembourg. This brewery had a museum, and in that museum was a 100-year-old electric generator. Why? Because back before power grids existed, if you wanted electricity, you had to generate it yourself. Every hotel, every factory, every business all had their own generators. And here's where this gets interesting. Bezos looked at that old generator and said, and I quote, "That is what computation is like today. Everybody has their own data center, and that's just not going to last. It makes no sense. You're going to buy compute off the grid." That's AWS. And at first glance, you might think, okay, he's talking about businesses moving to cloud services. And yeah, that's partially true. AWS, or Amazon Web Services, is already a massive business doing exactly that. But here's the thing, the tech industry doesn't stop at enterprise. They never do. Multiple tech outlets picked up on this and immediately connected the dots to consumer PCs. Windows Central wrote an article literally titled "Jeff Bezos Said the Quiet Part Out Loud. Hopes that you'll give up your PC to rent one from the cloud." And honestly, when you look at the current state of the tech industry, it's not hard to see why people are connecting these dots. Let's talk about what's happening right now that makes Bezos' vision seem less like a prediction and more like an inevitability. We're in the middle of what's being called Ramageddon, a massive shortage and price spike in DRAM, SSDs, and other crucial PC components. Tom's Guide reported that predictions suggest this shortage won't normalize until around 2028. Companies like Dell and Asus have already signaled price increases across their entire PC lineup. And here's the kicker. Micron has completely shut down its consumer DRAM operations to prioritize larger strategic customers. Translation? They're prioritizing AI data centers over games and regular consumers. Now, is this a natural market response to demand, or is it artificial scarcity designed to push consumers? Now, is this a natural market response to demand, or is it artificial scarcity designed to push consumers toward cloud solutions? That's the conspiracy theory angle. And honestly, I can't say for certain, but what I can tell you is that when you have one of the wealthiest tech CEOs on the planet saying local computing is antiquated at the exact same time that local computing is becoming prohibitively expensive, that's just one heck of a coinky-dink there, isn't it? Let me read you what Slashdot commentator said, because I think they nailed it. Saying, "It's clear Bezos' vision is that he gets to look at what everybody does on their computer and nothing to do with what actual ownership might become. The ultimate rent income stream." And here's what makes this especially insidious. We've already accepted this model in other areas of our lives, and most of us didn't put up a fight. I mean, think about it. Music went from owning CDs and MP3s to Spotify subscriptions. Movies and TV from DVDs to Netflix, Disney Plus, and a dozen other streaming services. And gaming, well, you have Xbox Game Pass, GeForce Now, PlayStation Plus, and all these other subscription models. I mean, even Steam, you can't own like a physical copy anymore. And you know what all of those services have in common? That's right. Most of them run on Amazon Web Services or similar cloud infrastructure. Bezos has already won those battles. Windows Central pointed this out in their coverage, saying hundreds of millions of us have already given away ownership over music, TV shows, and movies to cloud companies like Spotify and Netflix, both of which run on AWS. So the infrastructure is already there. Microsoft already has Windows 65, a cloud-based version of Windows for Business. It sucks, but a lot of people use it. They've tested consumer versions before. NVIDIA is pushing GeForce Now and just added a 100-hour monthly cap, which tells you the economics are still being figured out, but that's really where they're wanting to push you. Amazon sells the Fire TV Cube as a workspace's thin client for enterprise customers, and HP just unveiled the Elite Board AI PC at CES 2026, a keyboard-sized desktop replacement that's basically a thin client. So what I'm seeing here is the pieces are all in place. They're just waiting for local PC ownership to become so expensive that the average consumer says, you know what, $30 a month for unlimited computing, that sounds pretty good compared to $2,000 for a new PC, which, let's be honest, $2,000 is a joke. It is much higher. If you want good RAM, it's much higher. Good GPU, we're probably talking $5,000 right now. But let's talk about what you would really be giving up if you were to move to cloud computing, because it's not just about money. When your computing happens on someone else's servers, you lose privacy. Everything you do goes through their servers. Every document, every search, every file, they can see it all. You also don't own your software anymore. You license it, all of it. They can change the terms, raise prices, or shut down services whenever they want. They're already kind of doing it now, but it will get so much worse when those are all hosted on their cloud servers. And then you run into the always online problem. No internet, no computer. Good luck working on that flight, or if you're in a rural area with bad internet. And I've been testing out Starlink. It is not nearly there yet. And then you give up control. Like, they decide what you can and can't do on your computer. You want to mod a game, install unsigned software, repair your own device? Well, too bad. As one Reset Era commenter put it, zero privacy, zero ownership, and endless subscription price increases. No thanks. And here's the thing about subscriptions, they always get more expensive over time. Xbox Game Pass just jumped to $30 per month for the ultimate tier. Netflix has raised prices, I don't know how many times now. And you think cloud PC rentals would be any different? Okay, so after diving deep into this here, here's my honest assessment. Is Bezos' cloud computing vision inevitable? I don't think so, at least not in the way he's describing. First, there's a crucial piece of context that got lost in the headlines. When you actually watch the full interview, Bezos is specifically talking about enterprise data centers, businesses running their own server farms. That's what AWS was designed to replace, and it's been incredibly successful at that. The jump from businesses shouldn't run their own data center to consumers shouldn't own their own PCs is an extrapolation that media outlets made, not necessarily what Bezos explicitly stated. Second, the economics still don't work for most use cases. Cloud gaming has been the future for a decade now, and it still represents a tiny fraction of the gaming market. Why? Because latency, compression artifacts, bandwidth caps, and simple fact that for many people, owning hardware is still cheaper and more reliable than renting access to it. And third, and this is important, people are pushing back. When Microsoft tried to push Windows 11's online requirements and Copilot AI integration, they got massive backlash. When NVIDIA announced the 100-hour GeForce Now cap, people lost their minds. Even the reaction to this Bezos story has been overwhelmingly negative across tech forums and social media. But here is ultimately what worries me. Even if cloud PCs don't become the only option, they might become the default option for the average consumer who doesn't know any better or can't afford any different. And that's how you end up with a two-tier system. Those who can afford and maintain local hardware, and those who rent their computing from big tech. So where does this leave us? Jeff Bezos isn't necessarily wrong that cloud computing will continue to grow. AWS is proof that enterprise models work. AI is driving unprecedented demand for data center capacity, and that's pushing consumer hardware prices into the stratosphere. But the idea that we're all going to happily give up our PCs to rent glorified terminals from Amazon, I think that's where Bezos and the tech industry are going to meet serious resistance. The problem is that resistance requires alternatives. It requires companies actually manufacturing consumer-grade components. It requires prices staying within reach of normal people. And right now, with AI sucking up all the DRAM and memory production, with companies like Micron just literally exiting the consumer market, those alternatives are getting harder to find. I think ultimately we're going to end up with a split. Kind of like if we're going to look at gaming, right? We're going to have people like the big AAA companies are going to push more towards cloud gaming, and the smaller indie single A, double A companies, I think, will innovate in order to have their games run on hardware components, I guess you could say, but still set a high bar. And I also think this is in some ways where the free market can work. If you have such a high demand for something, it leaves the door open for other companies to start manufacturing RAM that's available at an affordable price to the average consumer. Some place like, I don't know, China. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but they could do it. But what do you think? Am I being paranoid? Am I being overly optimistic? Do you think the writing is ultimately on the wall for PC ownership? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this valuable, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe for more tech, gaming, and industry related content. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and peace out.